So they gave me a couple minutes here to just talk to you about storytelling. Scott Taylor, Data Whisperer, thanks for joining us today. Thrilled to be part of this holiday book party again. Talking about my type of data storytelling, which is data storytelling for data management. There are really two kinds of data stories out there. There's the kind for analytics that are quite popular. Lots of books. Brent's going to come on later and talk about some of that too. But it's about putting data in the business user's hands to drive a business action. Business intelligence, analytics, data science, super important. But there's another kind of data storytelling out there that I try to be the expert on, which is data storytelling for data management. Stories about making your data. So there's stories about making your data. There's stories about using your data. Two kinds of data storytelling out there. I do one, lots of other people do another. But the point is, you need them both. And the bigger point is, you need to be able to tell a story, whether it's about data or for data or making data or to your kids or to your family. Being able to craft a story and a narrative that will be engaging and people will listen to is a soft skill that goes back to the cave person days. That's the way we communicated. So what I wanted to tell you actually in my minutes I have here is a story I have in the book about telling a story and hearing from a great storyteller about what he does to tell stories. So it's a story about a story about a story about a storyteller, which if I didn't lose count, that makes it a meta story. Just to start with the end, so I don't keep you too much in suspense. This was about a conversation I had with Francis Ford Coppola. Yes, the Francis Ford Coppola, the Francis Ford Coppola of Godfather fame. He's an icon, certainly in my family. It's steeped in all this historical lore. My family kind of looks at The Godfather and that group of films almost like a religious text. We quote them all the time. We kind of are steeped in their whole mental attitude toward family, toward business, toward all those great things. We all quote The Godfather all the time. Actually, I had a boss once who didn't see The Godfather, and I never felt the same about him again. So how did I meet Francis Ford Coppola? I'm at the Gartner conference. So I actually get to talk to him at a data conference. So it kind of combines two things I love, movies and data and going to conferences. I guess that's three things. But anyway, I'm at the Gartner conference. And years ago, they used to separate the Gartner conferences. So this year it's the Data and Analytics Conference. But way back when it was the MDM conference, Master Data Management, and then the Business Intelligence, Business Analytics Conference. So they were separate, right? So it was data management, business intelligence, kind of both kinds of storytelling, if you will. Now we're in this big, beautiful hotel. Of course, the MDM show is in the basement. This is all true, and it's actually all in my book. It's in the basement. It's on the lower level. It's kind of small. It's a little bit darker. You know, we're all kind of milling around down there. And then the business intelligence show is up in the grand ballroom on the second floor. Now, we were separated. You couldn't really commingle the shows, but we had the same kind of badge. And so when lunch comes up, I see on our agenda for the MDM show that we've got somebody from, I don't know, an automotive company or a bank talking about MDM and that sort of thing. And then upstairs in the grand ballroom for the business intelligence audience, they have Francis Ford Coppola. I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to this. So our badges look kind of the same. I'm a guy who can, walk in with confidence. I go up to the grand ballroom. I get beeped in, walk right by the guard there. Not that they're not going to let me in. I meander my way up and I get into the 10th row. So there he is, my icon, Francis Ford Coppola on stage. These Gartner analysts come in and they ask him questions and he just tells story after story after story. Working with Marlon Brando, all this other kind of great stuff. At the end of it, they're going to ask questions. So I'm ready with my question. And the first question is like in the first row, the Gartner analyst gets up and says, we have a first question. That person asks a question. The second question comes from right around that same area. The third question comes from that same area. I'm like, the fix is in here. They're not going to open this up to questions. So in the third question, I catch Coppola's eye and he kind of nods at me because I'm only 10 rows away. So now me and him are the only people in this room of 2,000 folks who know I'm next. He finishes the third question. He points to me and he goes, "What's your question?" I stand up, and believe me, all the Gartner analysts in the front row are like glaring at me, like, how did you like break our sequence here? I was about to look around to all these folks in business intelligence and go, you know what? You're nothing without the people downstairs in master data management, but I didn't want to blow my cool. So I look up and I say to Coppola, I give him all kinds of compliments, talk to him about what he's meant to my family, tell him he's one of the greatest storytellers ever. And I ask him, how do you know a great story when you find it? The answer to that question is in my book. You can get my book, Data Storytelling for Data Management. I've got the whole thing transcribed in there. Actually, I have, where am I? Actually, I have, when I knew that I was going to be the next question, I hit record on my phone. So this was in 2015, I think, 2014. So I'm writing my book and I got to find this little teeny tiny disc from like 3 phones ago where I know I have the whole thing recorded. I transcribed the whole thing. And so I have that dialogue between me and him in the book. And it was a thrill to listen to. I actually re-listened to it this morning, hearing him and I kind of talk back and forth in front of these thousands of people. But the essence of what he told me, not to leave you in too much suspense, but he says it better than I do, is you just know. It just starts to live with you. You sit and you just have this sense of an instinct that goes, this is a story that's going to grab people's attention. Now, was I looking for some big magic wand kind of answer? Sure. Did you think it's some sort of trick app, looking for all those kinds of tips? It wasn't there. Was I disappointed? Not really, because that's how stories are. This is the softest of softest of softest skills out there. And many of you in the data space look for kind of very strict cause and effect. Let's write this code. Let's do these programs. I say this and this will happen. Stories aren't like that. Stories have to grow on you. They have to feel right. They have to sound right. And you have to feel right and good about telling them. So the overall point of this, and again, I go pretty deep into it in my book, is trust your instincts, listen, and see whether you really feel right about it. If you don't feel right about it, your audience isn't going to buy it. So it's a real point around developing that sort of soft skill instinct. And sometimes things don't work. I mean, not all of Coppola's films are, runaway hits. Some of them were flops. Some of them are absolutely the greatest films of all time. But even the best storytellers out there sometimes don't hit the mark. So when you look at all this whole data storytelling world, and I know a lot of you are, know that every story isn't going to work the first time. Go through drafts, rehearse it, talk to people, see if this sounds right, mull it over in your mind, look at a way to change the words, to change the framing. It's a soft skill, gang, and the only way to really, really, really get good at it is to practice, practice, practice. So there's my little story about a story about a story. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Take a look more in my book, Data Storytelling for Data Management, and see how I weaved in Francis Ford Coppola into a data book.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ravit, you're on mute.
Oh,
there you
Scott,
go.
this was amazing.
Yes, thank you so much, Scott. We've got questions for you. We've got giveaways that we're about to go forward with. Just a reminder for folks, this is what we're giving away, and I'll just share my screen briefly here. Data Whisperer, hashtag Data Whisperer is what you need to put in there. Before we do the giveaway, I'm gonna ask you our first question from Amir. And he's asking, why is it important to weave stories around data management? Why should we keep it separate from the analytics or business storytelling?
Excellent question, because data management needs to get funded in a way that business intelligence gets funded. Data management is kind of ignored or doesn't get the same kind of focus and spotlight, and certainly isn't sexy and glittery like a lot of stuff going on in analytics. And there's this defined practice in data, in analytics, data storytelling. So my thesis is for companies to really support data management at a strategic level, we need to create a narrative. It might be separate, but it's definitely connected, but a narrative about making data, about why stewarding, governing, managing foundational data in your organization is so critical to literally everything else you do in technology. It's kind of an unsung expertise at a lot of organizations. And so I'm trying to help elevate that message and show, again, there's these two stories. They're connected, but Storytelling about data management is where data starts.
Mhm.
Storytelling about business intelligence is where data ends up. And there's that journey we've got to all articulate in some sort of narrative. But good question.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question here from George Ferrican. You might know him.
Was he shorter in person?
You might have heard of him before. So was Coppola shorter in person?
I'd never really seen it. He was sitting down, so I don't know. It was kind of up there, but he seemed, everybody on stage looks huge. So I didn't get to meet him afterwards, but so I don't really know. I was so starstruck, and I was also so thrilled with my own gumption to like catch his eye. Yeah. And believe me, I can still see those couple of Gartner analysts just like peering at me, like, "Who are you to interrupt our little?" Our little scheme here to let all our big clients ask him a question. That part was equally thrilling.
Yes, I'm sure. All right, let's take another question here from Mr. Mike Nash. Thanks for joining us, Mike. He says, great chat. For a good story to land, do you need to research your audience?
Without question, Mike, you got to know who you're talking to. Are you talking to a group that really is, more data oriented? Are you talking to a bunch of business leaders who don't know anything about data? Are you talking to students who are new? Are you talking to experts who you might feel slightly intimidated about? Sometimes I do. I'm talking to all these folks who kind of know a whole lot more than I do. So knowing your audience or having some sense of your audience is absolutely critical to understand how that story might land. You'll never know everything, and there's always surprises, but having a sense of it is really important. And I do a lot of public speaking, as you guys know, a lot of events, and I always have some time with the producers to talk about, okay, who's going to be out there? What kind of categories do they represent? What's the nature of the businesses? Give me anything out there so I know something about the group that's going to be listening to me.
That makes sense. I think for any type of story and any type of audience, at least some research is always necessary, so you know who you're talking to. I still remember I had a moment, this is pre-COVID, when I had to present to my daughter's pre-K class, which is not even pre-K, it was a 3-year-old program on data visualization, and then giving a talk at ODSC to data professionals with thousands of people in the crowd. And you prepare differently for each audience, but you prepare and research nevertheless, because you don't want to get booed by any of those.
Booed by a bunch of preschoolers could really.
And that's more likely actually than the latter. So